Right now, here at the start, somehow I feel my heart has split apart and is jagged and ragged, and fragments act like tenants in places they don't belong. A piece is sinking in my stomach. It pulses, wreaking havoc, convulses in a panic. There's a second in my throat. In a second, I might choke. Then the rest lie in my lungs, test my breath, and I regret that I've begun and selected this quest. Tears wait behind my eyes, rarely comes as a surprise, but I can't relate my cries, but I must rise and take the bait. And though I'm screaming Mayday, this happens on my good day. I cling to verse like it's my nurse, because if I quit my rhyme, you'll find that my voice is shaky and my mind is crazy and the stage is feeling hazy, and that I've suffered from performance anxiety for nearly 15 years. A friend told me once that she gets scared before she sings, but she uses that momentum to make her voice stronger. What I never understood is how to use that emotion to your advantage when it feels like your body is starting to shut down. There's a difference between feeling scared or excited or nervous for a performance and experiencing performance anxiety or stage fright. Performance anxiety is classified as a social phobia by the American Psychiatric Association, defined as the fear or persistent phobia that arises when an individual is required to perform. It may manifest well before a performance or in the moment itself, with symptoms ranging from shaking, hyperventilation, dry mouth, facial tics, sweating, or nausea. It can affect amateurs and professionals alike and be responsible for the early termination of a promising career. As an academic myself, I was excited to find that the issue has been addressed in academia. In 2011, a performer named Gordon Goodman wrote his PhD on the subject of performance anxiety, finding that over 80% of professional actors have experienced stage fright at least once in their careers. Some chronic sufferers who have since overcome their fear include Adele, Barbra Streisand, and Robin Williams. The study also finds that the condition is connected to how much control a performer feels over a specific performance situation, and is not related to factors such as age, experience, success, or the fear of being incompetent. I started experiencing these symptoms from the age of 13, but I didn't realize at the time that something was awry. As a huge theater lover, I would sing and dance in our school musical every year as a member of the chorus, and I sang in a school choir, but I specifically avoided situations that required me to perform solo. But a series of incidents made me aware that the way I responded when put in the spotlight was not a typical reaction. Like the time when I was 15 and I had to give a class presentation on the Salem witch trials. And it felt like I was choking the words out. Like my thoughts had to travel through this long tunnel where at the end there was a filter there that made it sound to everyone like I was crying. Or like the time when I was 16 and my hands locked around the note cards and I stood there, frozen, in front of the class, until the note cards fell everywhere and I ran out of the room crying. Or like the time that same year when I auditioned for a piece from Les Miserables for our school choir, and I was sobbing in anticipation of having to sing, and sobbing in the moment itself while barely getting the words out, and sobbing immediately after in response to the trauma I had just put my body through. I was always so frustrated that everyone was basing my ability to perform on my performance. I wanted them to see me, but all they could see were the filters and the fear that my ability was being masked by. I learned to prolong the inevitable. I stalled the beginnings of a presentation or an audition in hopes to buy myself time to actually be ready for it, or prolong it indefinitely. If I triple check that the microphone is on, maybe I'll get off on a technicality and not have to do it. If someone was misinformed enough to allow me to hold the words in front of me, I would cling to the paper long after I had the words perfectly memorized, just to avoid having to look up at everyone and see their responses. Nowadays, my crutch is to be such a dramatic or outlandish character who may have a distinct character trait, or be a little kid who's so excited, or be singer. I love being able to just be silly on a stage, and I aspire to perform roles that require this of me. Because if I were to act as myself, or as a person who's not dramatized or crazy, and just be someone vulnerable and stripped down, I'd feel more exposed than if I weren't wearing any clothes. Because when I stand here in front of all of you, with this stupid microphone, you can hear every breath, every cough, every time I stutter or wicks the birds up. You see my raw self, who I truly am, my real voice. And sometimes I'm not even sure what that is. But my journey to overcome my stage fright began with stripping it all down, digging to find the roots of the problem, and thereby learning how to navigate the growing process. The push initially came from the outside, when a friend forced me to stand on a stage in front of him and sing the song I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, such that he could hear me from the back of the audience. I stood there. Now? You want me to do it now? Okay. What song again? Yeah, you told me, I know. Okay, great. You can hear me okay, right? Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, I'm alive. Okay, just let me know when you want me to start. Okay. I dreamed a dream in time gone by. When hope was high and life worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. When I looked up and I saw his face accepting anything that I was offering him, I began to sing a bit more steadily. I realized that in preparing for an audition or a speech, it's not enough to just go through the lines over and over and over again in my head. Or that if it sounds great in the shower, it'll be flawless in the audition. I realized that the thing that I thought was hurting me the most was what I needed to use to help me: an audience. So, at the age of 17, I dug out my old stuffed animals from the closet. And I would practice in front of them several times before having to give a presentation. And already I noticed a slight improvement when I would stand before my class. That part was easy. Next, I moved on to performing for more animate objects, starting with myself. I performed in front of a mirror. Now, I don't consider myself to be a particularly frightening person, but having to read lines or sing in front of myself was, and sometimes is, a very frightening experience. I don't always like what I see, but I have to accept all the flaws and weird expressions that I make if I want other people to accept that part of me too. When I got to college, I found myself in a situation where my grades were dependent on class participation. As a government and politics major, I had to share the floor space with some very confident and outspoken students. And so I resorted to writing exactly what I wanted to say on the side of my paper. And if I intended to offer information in a class discussion, and maybe sometimes go off book from my notes, I'd feel my heart pounding in every part of my body, and I could barely string a logical sentence together. I was back inside that tunnel, and this time it was taking any intelligent word out of my lexicon. Sometimes government is bad. I realized that I could not continue tackling the problem alone, so I reached out to my professors who offered me support and gave me tips on how to speak up in class. They taught me that I needed to trust that what I was saying was worth listening to. That I, myself, and the knowledge I possess are valid. That my expression is not only accepted, but encouraged. The motto of TED is ideas worth spreading, but before we can share an idea, be it brilliant or simple, we must believe that brilliant ideas can be born from our flawed and fearful selves. In the last few years, I've been diving into the deep end. Instead of trying to overcome the obstacles life's thrown my way, I've been seeking these challenges out. I started voice lessons, and I joined an improvisational theater workshop where the cardinal rule is acceptance of whatever is being said. And I went to some auditions and realized that if I'm learning from the steps I've picked up along the way, it's a good thing that my performance is being based on my performance, and that I can dull the filters that used to change the way my voice sounded. I'm happy to say that I'm now at a point where I can stand on a stage in front of hundreds of people and present my academic research or play a silly character or act in a show. But this is only a step along my journey. The filters are still there when I try to sing by myself, and that's something I'm still working on. And in the last show I performed in, I made up my mind during dress rehearsal that I absolutely needed to quit. I didn't. And then on the night of the last show, I had a full-on anxiety attack minutes before curtain. My breath still gets crazy. I still feel like I'm always about to cry, and sometimes it still feels like torture. But even though it's a struggle almost every time, I put faith in myself that I can turn off the crazy and turn on the stage presence. And when I feel the high of performing and seeing the audience drink it up, I forget how horrible it felt just seconds earlier. When we experience a threat, our instinct is either for flight, fight, or freeze. I've been teaching my body to change its instinctual response by knowing myself, trusting myself, recognizing that I am human and will make mistakes along the way. Understanding that no one is judging me as harshly as I'm judging myself, so if I make a mistake, no one's going to notice unless I call attention to it. Forgiving myself if I mess up a note, because songs are hard to sing sometimes. And teaching myself that if I flub up a line, I didn't do a disservice to the playwright for messing up their art, because a play is equal to more than the sum of its lines. Just like a journey is equal to more than the sum of its milestones. I began my talk today by slamming a poem that I wrote, and that was my first time performing my own creative piece in front of an audience. I'd like to end my 15 minutes of stage time by sharing another poem that I feel best characterizes the lessons that have led me to be on this stage today. When you're faced with fear inside you, take my word, of this I know. Ask for help and trust yourself. Roots need sun to help them grow. Believe that you can fight it. Leave the doubt behind the wing. Harness strength inside you to act or dance or even sing. But how to gauge what you've accomplished? Sing the song or walk the walk? You may find the best barometer is to give a resounding, terrifying, but overwhelmingly rewarding TED Talk. Thank you.